Keep watching today's video if you want to learn how to manipulate New Zealand flax leaves to create a design just like this. Welcome back. If you're part of my Facebook group, so that's Sharon's Innovations group over on Facebook, then you will recognise this container, because this is a new container that I've bought this year, and it's come from one of my favourite places to buy containers, and that's the charity shop. Now, if you're a florist like me, then we buy containers from wholesalers or a florist supplies. But for those of you watching the YouTube channel at home, I tend to design these arrangements for a flower arranger or a hobby arranger. So I think it's a really good place to start looking for containers if you're a beginner. This is a nice tall container, so it's going to suit your standard home, although you could make a really big design in it for your local church as well. And I'm going to do a more modern grouped style of arranging this morning. I've been given quite a few Phormium tenax leaves, and I've manipulated them into different shapes, and I'm going to do something that I think is quite slimline and contemporary in keeping with the vase. Now, I'll often tell you that if you've got a white container to try, or cream in this case, if you've got a white or cream container, try and link it with the flowers on the top as well. Otherwise the container can become a bit dominant. I've gone for a sort of autumnal colour combinations today, mainly because it picked up nicely with the choice of foliage I've got. And we'll look at that in just a minute. Now, one of the difficulties quite often with a container like this is it's hard to find something that fits on the top for your floral foam. I was hoping this was going to fit, this little plastic container that comes from inside a small hat box, but it's too small. Sometimes you can find a secondary container that also fits inside that you can fill with floral foam. But what you really need to consider is that when you do put foam in, you can water it easily. Otherwise you'll have to fill the whole container with water so that it reaches the floral foam at the top. Otherwise the water will just all drain to the bottom and your foam will dry out really quickly. There isn't a great deal I can do for the style of arrangement I'm doing today by using wire netting. So I'm going to have to go with green foam, but there are lots of arrangements on the channel that don't use floral foam if you're looking for something more environmentally friendly. And if you haven't been here before, then hello and welcome. My name is Sharon. I'm a UK-based florist. I've got lots of online lessons if you want to learn floral design, and you really need to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next tutorial. And if you hit that notification button, you'll also be told when I upload a new video. So off camera, I sort of problem solved how I'm going to get some floral foam in there, and I've cut a square piece of foam to the same diameter as the top section, and I've wrapped it in some cellophane. So it's an offcut of cellophane. That could be anything that's going to waterproof it, and I'm hoping that it's going to wedge in there suitably. What I've also done is I've taken the corner off the foam so that when you do water it, there's an area where the water can drizzle down the side. Otherwise the water is just going to bounce around on the top and it's not going to keep your foam hydrated. And that will then wedge tightly into the container. Now, if you go too small, it's going to drop to the bottom. If you make it too fat, you're going to have to trim it down and squeeze it in. So you need to be careful at this stage that you make your foam slightly bigger than the gap so you can really wedge it in. Otherwise, it's just going to drop straight to the bottom. So I've managed to wedge my floral foam into the container, and I've got quite wide foliage that's going in this arrangement. So I don't want to push it down too far because there won't be enough room for my different greeneries. Or in my case, I've only got one type of greenery. So I don't want to push it down too far and limit the amount of foam that I've got visible, because I need to get some wide stemmed foliage. And that wide stem foliage is the Phormium tenax or the New Zealand flax, and you can see already that this is split into two. Now I'm going to roll the top of this and staple it with an ordinary household staple. This isn't a new technique, this is something that's been done for a very long time, and there are people that are cleverer than me at this technique. But what it does is it gives you a more interesting leaf to work with, and I'm going to narrow it down so it's not quite so wide and so visually heavy, because we think about it, it's very, very wide and flat, and it's going to be a bit eye-catching if I use the whole thing at its full width. So I'm just going to play around with it, use my staple, thin it off slightly. And the main reason for me doing this is because I've got a narrow container, it's slimline, it's quite fragile looking. I don't want to put a ginormous big fat leaf on the top, because the harmony, the connection between the two isn't going to work quite so well. So it's going to be a fairly tall arrangement, and I'm thinking about 1.5 times the height of my container. What I'm going to do here at the end is take off some of the bulk. Let's just do that back piece as well, so that I've got less stem going into my floral foam, and I'm not taking a big chunk of my foam out. That I think is going to be too tall, so we'll make it a bit smaller. Do the same thing again, take off the side pieces just to narrow down the width there of my big Phormium. So we're looking to go 1.5 to twice the height of my container. So I'm looking to go 1.5 times the height of my container, or slightly taller, and that is going to sit slightly off centre to my left hand side. And I think I'm going to trim off a few more of these leaves just around the side, so that I don't hide the floral foam and make it harder for myself to arrange. So nice bit of twisty turny movement there, and your eye being drawn all the way up to the top, and that gives me my height. Now I'm going to do quite a slimline arrangement today, nothing that's too wide, something really narrow and in keeping with the container. But what I've also done is I've shaped some more of the Phormium leaves. Let's just get rid of those straggly bits. I've shaped lots of different pieces into various size loops. Now Phormium tenax here in South Wales grows in abundance. It seems to like our salty air, so this is available to pick all over the place. But this has been given to me by somebody that's been doing a little bit of gardening over the last couple of weeks. Don't quite know why anybody wants to do gardening, because it's really cold outside. Left them for me in work so that I can use them in some floral designs. And what I'm going to do is really closely arrange them on one side of the arrangement, so we get that really lovely grouped effect. Now this one I've done with a wider, fatter piece. These pieces I've done with the New Zealand flax being stripped down slightly narrower, and I'm just going to put them all in, and then I'll show you how I did it. So I'm aiming to bring the pieces out to the side to try and cover as much of the foam and that cellophane wrap underneath, so that it makes it as neat as possible. And I'm really going to group them really close and tightly together, so that we create a bit of interest on one side. And if you're lucky enough to have any type of greenery in the garden, then you can arrange with it on its own. You don't have to always mix flowers. If you've got enough greenery in the garden, you can make a really pretty design, or something like this that is more of a statement piece with just the greenery that you've got in the garden. So if I turn that round, you can see all this lovely rhythm, this movement on that one side, and then it contrasts really nicely with the straight piece in the middle. But what I also want to do is to have a few pieces on the side here to connect the two together, and I'll just show you very quickly how you can do that. So the New Zealand flax is a long straight leaf. This has been separated into two, so it looks like this when you buy it from a florist shop or whether you pick it from the garden. And because I don't want such visually heavy pieces, I've split them into two. And then what I can do is just roll it every now and again. Don't worry about creating a set pattern or trying to make them look all the same. Just make it very random, very loose and less controlled. Otherwise you'll struggle to make pieces that look similar to one another. Now this is called leaf manipulation, and there are quite a lot of books you can buy online that will teach you far more comprehensive designs than I've done here. But this is just a little bit of a play around with some leaves. So now we've got that staggered look. So by adding one in slightly higher, I now have that twirled movement stepping down towards the front. And then what I'm going to do around the front is just cut myself a narrower section on the base of the leaf. I'm going to add it in underneath at the back, and then I'm going to swirl it round and I'm going to attach it to the container. So we've got that colour and that movement down towards the front. I'm going to turn the end so we have a repetition of the pattern on the top. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach that onto the container with some of the Oasis Fix. Now the Oasis Fix is what we use to hold our plastic dishes to our containers. So I'm just going to position this where I want it to go. Attach my floral fix into the right position and then adhere the leaf to the floral fix. Now as long as your container is dry and it's not too cold, that's going to stick on there quite firmly. The studio is very cold at the moment, so that might spring off while I'm talking, but that gives you a different way of arranging your materials. And then I'm going to do the same with one more. I'm going to thin it out so we don't have two that are matching. I'm going to twirl the end again, just in a random shape. I'm not looking to match anything or create two pieces that look the same. We'll bring it round for you to see. Feed it in at the back, and then I'm going to slowly feed it through to the front and just spend a couple of minutes deciding where I want that to go. And I think after a bit of deliberation, I'm going to attach it on the bottom or below the first piece, so you can see how that looks. So what I've now created is a visual line. So your eye starts at the bottom and it swirls around, it goes round all these interesting shapes and straight up to the top. And then I've got some dynamic movement and something exciting on one side of the design, which is going to contrast against my flowers on the opposite side. Now what the Phormium also does, if you ever want to cover your floral foam and you don't have enough foliage or you don't want to make it too messy, you can use the Phormium leaves wrapped around in this area here to cover the foam. And I might need to do that later because I'm trying to restrict the amount of greenery that I'm using today so that I keep that quite modern look to the arrangement. Now I'm not sure if I said at the very beginning that I only had one type of foliage, and that in a way was a little bit of a lie. So I am also going to use the snake plant foliage. Now this has come from a plant. We usually refer to it as a mother-in-law's tongue, but it's now been renamed as a snake plant, presumably not to offend anybody. And this is also going to work really well in the floral foam as well. So we're going to start with one up towards the back and then the shorter, fatter piece more towards the front. And that's going to give us two layers of foliage, which is going to create some depth in the arrangement. So even when you're doing something that's more modern, you've still got to use those very traditional elements and principles of design, and an arrangement still needs to have depth. You can't have anything that's too flat. Now to pick up on the creams of the container, I've got some lovely stock. This is a florist grade stock, although you should be able to get this quite easily in a supermarket. And I'm going to stagger it down just in between the snake plant, remembering that it's an upright arrangement. I don't want anything coming out too far at the side. So in a way, this is a form. I'm faffing about with this because I don't know how long to cut it. So in a way, this is a form of a parallel arrangement because we're not bringing anything out radial. Everything has been brought out in that parallel lines and those parallel groupings, which I know confuses a lot of people because we've all been told that a parallel arrangement is that long arrangement with flowers in groups with negative space in between. But there is more than one way of making a parallel arrangement. Because my Phormiums are a brownish red, I wanted to find something that was going to connect in colour, and I've decided to go with an orangey colour because the orange is a lovely connection with the brown, but the lighter shades also connect with my container and my stock. And I'm going to stagger these down alongside. Hopefully there's enough space in my foam just to tuck them in alongside the stock. So I'm repeating really the pattern that I've already created there with those 2 original stocks, and 2 nice, healthy, straight gerberas are going to tuck in really nicely there on the side. Now you might be able to pick up on the camera that some of that snake plant isn't quite in the foam, it's just sticking out over the edge, but that's okay because it's a succulent and it holds a lot of water and it's going to last for ages in the arrangement. Now again, to give me a bit of a link with the brown tones and the gerbera, I've got a few pieces of Hypericum, and this is the nice florist grade Hypericum, and that's going to come just underneath where the gerbera start, and I'm going to just tuck that in on the side of the foam, remembering that the foam is not too deep in that container, so I can't push the material down too far. Now, one question I've been asked recently, and it probably is quite a good time to answer it now, is why aren't I pushing all the flowers right to the bottom of the foam? And there is no need to do it with good quality flowers, as long as they're 1 centimetre to 1 inch into the foam. Now I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap between the placement of the Hypericum berries because I don't want to overcrowd the side, so that I'm bringing the colour and the texture of the Hypericum right the way down to the bottom. And then with a few pieces, the little offshoots, I'm just going to fill up and make a heavier concentration there of this nice reddish brown. Then my final placement is going to be an orange spray rose, and I'm going to put this in smaller sections just down alongside the Hypericum berry. That's going to help give me a connection with the orange that's inside my gerbera, and it's a really dainty little flower to complement the Hypericum berry. So that's the orange stem of the spray rose tucked in there in a group fashion towards the front. And now I've got to work on covering up that floral foam there at the back without making it messy and going down that traditional route by adding in lots of different types of foliage. If I had a flat leaf like a Galax leaf or a big ivy leaf, that would work quite well in there, but I don't have any today. So I'm going to wrap around another one of the Phormium leaves. So this is definitely a more modern style of arranging, but it would suit the home. It would look lovely on a reception desk in a hairdresser's or a doctor's surgery. If you've got quite a modern home, then it would work anywhere at home for you. And I've started with the Phormium leaf tucked in at the back, and I'm going to bring it, whoop, let's get that back in again, and I'm going to bring it really low down, tucked underneath, so that it tucks underneath and hides all of that mechanics, that plastic wrap, and that floral foam. Now I'm probably going to have to do this with 2 pieces of the Phormium, but you can get the idea. So that first one has worked quite well in covering up lots of that foam and the plastic wrap, and then I'm going to bring one more round just from the front section. I'm going to have to thread it through those placements and then work it back around. And this time, rather than sticking it to the container with some floral fix, I'm going to push the end part back into the foam here at the back. Now a Phormium leaf is a very long-lasting piece of greenery, so if you can't manage to get it in the foam before you wrap it around, you can just wrap it around the container and attach it to the container, because it will cope really well out of water. But I'm just working now towards the back, making sure that all of that foam is covered and my design is nice and neat at the back. Now, if you don't have the New Zealand flax available, think about anything that's quite pliable. So you'll be able to do a similar method with trailing ivy, although you'll get a more messy look. If you're lucky enough to have a stelia grass in your garden, you could do it with a stelia grass. And I think it would work really well with some long pieces of trailing fern. So a little bit more of a modern design. I hope that is something that you've really enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell to be told every time I upload a new video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye for now.